Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another virtual horsemanship class. My name is Nina, and today we're going to be talking about the evolution of our horse. So where our horses came from and how they came to be what we know and love now. So why is horse history important to us? Well, number one, to understand where horses came from, to better understand the behavior of our horses, to gain knowledge about the evolution of horses, and it is interesting information, and you will be filled with fun facts to share with all of your friends. Who am I? Like I said before, my name is Nina. I'm a riding instructor at Faith Hill Farm, and I'm also a student at Johnson & Wales University working towards a bachelor's degree in equine science. So it's basically horse science, and I can use that to do pre-vet or to work on training of horses. Otherwise, just general knowledge and a lot of science classes. So let's get started with some brief history. In 18,000 BC, if you don't know, BC means before Christ. So we're actually moving backwards in time, all right? So way in the beginning, horses were hunted for food. Traveling a little fast forward, 5,000 BC, they were domesticated and were also still used for food. 4,000 BC, horses were used for transportation, agriculture, and warfare. So they would pull a chariot, and this was quicker for humans to get around and intimidating to the enemy if they went into war. 3,000 to 2,000 BC, humans started riding and training horses for transportation and battle. So over in the bottom right-hand corner over here, this is actually a cave painting of a horse, all right, spanned back to 18,000 BC. In the middle, we have just a picture or a drawing of what horses used to look like. And over on the left, this is a chariot. So we have in stone this beautiful artwork of a horse pulling a chariot with humans. All right, so let's get into the deep history of horses. So like I said, 18,000 BC, they were used as a source of food. And moving up to 5,000 BC, humans captured and domesticated horses still as a source of food. But they learned how to capture and domesticate horses and breed them to get bigger horses, meaning more food for humans. Moving forward to 4,000 BC, humans stopped using horses as a food source, but rather figured out how horses can be used for transportation, agriculture, and warfare. Transportation, there's a nice picture right here, again, of a horse pulling a cart with a human driving them. In the middle, we have warfare, which is horses used for wars or agriculture over here in the bottom right. Agriculture is like farming. So as you can see, the horses are actually pulling a device, okay? And the human is directing the horse. So they would pull and create these divots for farmers to plant crops and basically for agricultural fields. It was really a huge step in the right direction for us as humans because we didn't have to use these devices by hand. We actually could use our horses to pull them, which made less work for us. And then fast forward to 3,000 to 2,000 BC, humans started actually riding horses on their back for the use of transportation and training horses under saddle for the use of warfare or battle. All right, so we have a couple pictures of horses being used for battle or warfare. Over here, this person probably was mounted on the horse, or the horse was just carrying some of their weapon. Over here, we can clearly see a horse pulling a cart through what looks like really deep trenches and mud. So horses were actually used for very important jobs. All right, let's get into some of the evolution of our horse. All right, and I apologize in advance if I butcher some of the names, but when horses were first on this earth, they were called Eohippus, okay? And that's kind of what this picture represents. So this is the first horse, all right? And we're gonna get into these individually, but I'd like to point out how many digits or fingers they had. So when horses were first on Earth, they had up to 5 digits or fingers, okay? And you can kind of see it down here in this picture. Then we have Mesiohippus, Mariochippus, Filiohippus, which was the first monodactyl. Monodactyl means standing on 1 digit. And then we have the horse, which we know and love today. This is just another picture of the size difference, which I think is very interesting to see how small they were and how they grew over time throughout their evolution. So some questions to keep in mind as we go through is, what are the 4 major characteristics or changes that took place during the evolution of the horse? What factors led to changes in the development of the modern horse? And what characteristics have stayed the same throughout the evolution of the horse? All right, so the first horse that came to be on Earth was the Eohippus. Their living environment was a thick and deciduous forest, okay? So this is probably why they had 5 digits. They had to go through really rough terrain to be able to scavenge for food. They were fox-sized, so pretty small. They had browsing teeth. And down here in the left-hand corner, you can see there was an extra little tooth here because they were eating much more rough terrain. They had 4 toes in the front and 3 toes in the back, total of 7 digits. And this picture is a little bit bigger, so you can kind of see how many toes they have in the front and back. And then over here is a different view of their foot. Okay, and as we go through, we're going to see how each digit was changed or morphed into something different as these animals evolved. Mesiohippus is the second part of evolution here. Their living environment was a conifer forest, a little less dense, okay, but not like we would see today in like open fields and terrains. They were a little larger than the Eohippus, still grass eaters, and they had more of a padded hoof, so they had a little bit more cushion on the bottom of their hoof. As you can see, they still had more than 1 digit, okay? So over here, we have 4 in the front, and we evolved to 3. All right, the other thing I want to point out is their skull. Their skull is a lot bigger, okay? And it doesn't have as many teeth. Next is the Mariochippus. Their living environment consisted of hard grasslands, and they started to live in herds. Okay, so we know horses now as herd animals. They like to socialize and be around other horses, and this is kind of where that started. They learned that living in larger herds kept them alive longer. They are bigger. They are around 35 inches tall at this point, give or take. Some resources say up to 48 inches. And they had complicated grinding teeth, so they actually evolved and their teeth started to change. So over in this right picture, you can see kind of what looks more similar to the horses we have now. They had these front teeth, and their back teeth were a lot more complicated, and they were actually flat, so the horses could grind their food down. Over here, we have their feet, and their forefoot actually changed. So remember we had up to 5 digits? Well, the 5th one went all the way up here, and that's what we know today as their chestnut. So if you look on the inside of your horse's hoof, it sometimes is around this area. We call that their chestnut. That's actually a descendant of their fifth digit, which is really cool. As they evolved, their digits became less and less to what we know now as a single digit animal. And that is where the fifth one went. Now they still had three, so they had one singular they'd sit on and then two more in the back, used as for rough terrain and the living environment that they were in. Then we have the Philaeohippus. Their living environment consisted of hard grasslands, and they still lived in herds. I'm assuming these herds were larger as they evolved because they learned that survival comes with numbers, meaning if you have more horses, you're less likely to be eaten by other animals and so forth. They were up to a small pony size, and these were the most similar to what we have as a modern horse. They were also the first monodactyl, meaning one digit. So if we break down the word, mono means one, dac, digit, okay? So monodactyl, meaning one digit. So we can see over in this right-hand picture, it's a little bit more as if it's our modern horse, the horses we know today. Right here is a little scale size compared to a human. And I like to include these pictures because it's interesting of their coat pattern, right? So over time, humans bred horses to have different colors and patterns, right? But in the early ages, they had to blend in with their environment. Notice the skull is a lot bigger because these horses are getting bigger over time. They're evolving into what we know and love today. And now this is the current horse. Their living arrangement is hard grassland, and they still continue to live in herds up to this day. Their size ranges, as we know. They have complicated grinding teeth in order to grind down those hard grasslands and different types of forage. And as we know, they are a single weight-bearing hoof, so a monodactyl. We can see that here. So this is the modern horse leg. They are a lot bigger in size, right? They live in herds, and their skull is so much bigger, and they actually have a longer nose. So I included this picture because I think it's really interesting to see the differences side by side. So we started out with a 38 centimeter animal. They had, let's see, 4 digits, very small skull with an extra tooth. And we slowly increase size and decrease the number of digits that they're walking on until we get to this, which is our equus or equine. And that's what we know and love today. Here's another example. Look at the size difference between the Equiohippus to the modern horse, right? And even looking at their digits. So these digits slowly started to get smaller and become part of their leg. So as I said before, horses have a chestnut on the side of the forefoot over here. They also have an ergot, which is right underneath their fetlock. Same idea. It's just calcium buildup of skin, and it continues to grow. Usually a farrier will cut it off, or sometimes you can pull them off. That's actually a spot where their digit used to be and the existence of their digit now. All right, so we're going to go through these questions one by one. This is when the video is going to stop, and you have to try your best to answer these 3 questions on your own. So the first question is, what are the 4 major changes that took place during the evolution of the horse? All right, here are our 4 changes: size, teeth, foot, and living arrangement, right? So their size, they went from very small to very large and a range of sizes. Their teeth and their skull started out smaller and grew larger, and they actually lost a tooth that they used to forage in the really dense land because they no longer needed it. Their feet, they used to walk on 4 to 5 digits. Now they walk on 1. and their living arrangement. They started to live in herds. They started to live in more of a hard environment, hard grassland. Okay, so those are the four major changes that took place. Number two, what factors lead to the changes in the development of the modern horse? All right, let's see the answer. Living arrangement and environment, and also changing climate conditions. So as the climate changes, animals have to adapt and evolve in order to survive as a species. So their living arrangement and environment changed due to the changing of the climate that they lived in. And number three, what characteristics have stayed the same throughout the evolution of the horse? Answer this best you can, and we will talk about it after. Okay, number three, their fight or flight response and way of thinking. So as we know, horses can be spooky, is what we call it now. They can spook, they can get frightened, and they have this instinctual fight or flight response. Horses are more of a flight animal, meaning they will run. That's why horses will spook sometimes, even now, right? They see something they don't recognize, and their first instinctual thought is to run. Okay, so that's super important when we ride these animals and we work with these animals to know that their way of thinking has not really changed throughout the span of the first horse on earth to now. They will always have these ways of thinking and responses no matter what happens. Okay, and I think that's really interesting and important to know, because I feel like now when you go and ride your horse or work with your horse on the ground, you'll have a better understanding of why they react this way. All right, and I just left some resources at the end. So if you are very interested in this topic and you want to learn more, these are some of the resources I used. And I also found a really cool horse evolution video, which is a cartoon, and it goes through, how horses were used in greater detail. So I really hope you enjoyed this lesson, this virtual horsemanship, and I hope to see you in the next one. If you haven't already, go check out my grooming video. That will also be on my channel. Have a great day, everyone.